Frank Tufano made a video about some princess so-and-so that follows a slave diet. Now, what's my problem with the way the carnivores and other people promote this concept of a slave diet? Well, because we all know, from what the science says, that diets of affluence cause health concerns. Diets that are rich in meat, cheese, eggs, and other high-fat, high-cholesterol foods cause health concerns. Then when you add into that refined foods, you have a disaster, okay? You also see these problems amongst people that are on public assistance in the United States because they are eating foods that are not good for them, meaning a lot of meats, cheeses, things of that nature, and refined foods, okay? So I'm going to leave some links to this. We also know this. The slave diets, why were slaves fed special diets? So they could perform better. A lot of the diets followed by slaves are the same diets that were followed by very elite athletes up until very recently. For example, the gladiators followed a diet that was mostly barley and vegetables. And we know this because of archaeological evidence. The Egyptian peasants followed a predominantly plant-based diet. And if you look at mummies, you can find hardening of the arteries in some of the Egyptian mummies of higher castes, okay? So why was this? Well, this was because they could afford meat and refined foods. The same holds true in medieval Europe. So the thing is, people of affluence can afford the foods that were killing themselves. I find it interesting that Frank did a video about how alcohol is terrible for you, because that is a food of affluence, okay? My point would be this. My point would be that you can't go by just painting with a thick brush or a broad brush and saying everybody that eats this is following a slave diet. The truth is, a slave diet was a very healthy diet because you needed to be healthy to do the work of who was in charge. That's the truth. And in fact, even African slaves, people that came here from Africa that were enslaved in the United States, that followed predominantly a traditional African diet, we now know that that was very healthy. There's also something called the Hispanic paradox. What the Hispanic paradox is, not all countries have the Hispanic paradox, by the way, but what the Hispanic paradox is in the United States, Hispanics, generally speaking, don't make very much money compared to other groups, and don't go to doctors compared to other groups, especially whites, okay? But yet Hispanics generally live longer and have less health concerns than whites, okay? So this is known as the Hispanic paradox. What's the Hispanic paradox? The Hispanic paradox is home-cooked food that's plant-based, okay? That's what the Hispanic paradox is. Now, that's not true for all Hispanic cuisines. For example, some of the cuisines of like Argentina is a beef-rich diet, and even Brazil, the affluent people, have a very meaty diet, okay? But the thing is, we know what promotes health, and it's every time. We know what doesn't promote health. We know what promotes illness. And then people go, oh, well, how do you know that plant-based diets promote health? Well, because if you want to do what people are doing that live longer, look at what it is. It's plant-based diets. Yes, there's genetic factors, but predominantly it's plant-based diets, okay? And if you, like the thing is with the carnivores, I can go find Seventh-day Adventists that are 100 years or older. How many people do you think you're going to find that followed the carnivore diet for 50, 60, 70, 80 years? You're not very likely to find people that ate a predominantly meat-centered diet for that long. It just isn't plausible to think that way. Especially with what we know already about dietary patterns and mortality. Red meat and meat cause higher mortality, usually due to cardiac infarction or due to cancer. Meats are carcinogenic, as is milk, okay? So that's why you see that happening. And that's all for this video.